Thank you, members. Recognize the member for Fredericton South and leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. There's only a couple of areas I want to ask questions on, Mr. Chair, and I want to say now good afternoon to the Minister and his staff, through you, of course. Bon après-midi. I have my first area of questions are around the unconditional grant or the equalization grant, however people like to refer it to it. In the community funding line of the budget, I see that for 21-22, you have $68,879,000 allocated towards that. Really no change from this past fiscal year. My first question on this, because the unconditional grant is a complicated kind of calculation, and I've been walked through that by more than one municipal leader. It makes my head hurt every time. So it does raise questions about whether it is achieving what it was intended to by way of equalization across municipalities. So my first question is simply whether in this fiscal year there is a plan to dedicate some staff resources to overhauling that formula to ensure that it's achieving the objectives that it was originally created for.
Mr. Chair, to the member from Fredericton South, thank you for the excellent question. Again, it is definitely a complicated formula, and on a weekly basis I have that question, so I totally agree with you that it is, however, the formula is legislated, so to your two specific questions on, does it achieve its goals? Well, it's legislated and it's there to definitely help in, municipalities. And to your second question, yes, it is definitely worked on at the local government within the department, and it's being reviewed, part of the working group on finances / taxation. So it is being looked at. It's again, as I alluded to the member of Tracadie, when I met the council of Tracadie, it was definitely a question for that municipality. And again, I have that question on a weekly basis. So to that specific question, sir, yes, we are working on it, and it's part of that working group that is reviewing part of the reform process.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm encouraged to hear that. It's a very positive response, and it's always good to make sure that these things that have been established are actually achieving what government wants them to, what they need to, in a fair and just way. One of the issues around the unconditional grant has been that for university towns, like where my riding is here in Fredericton, we've got 2 universities, or Sackville or Moncton, where St. John, where but here we have, for example, in my riding, 10,000 students come every year, not this year, but every normal year, and we will see them again in the fall. And my understanding is students are not part of the calculation, and when you look at the population of a municipality, in determining what the unconditional grant should be for that municipality. Is consideration in this review being given to building students, les étudiants, into the formula, or if not, why not?
Monsieur le Président, aux membres de Fredericton-Sud, premièrement, je veux juste, moi aussi, parler de ma circonscription monctonienne. Je suis fier. L'Université de Moncton n'est pas dans ma circonscription, c'est dans la circonscription avoisinante. Mais je suis tellement fier pour être un député de Monctonais, avoir l'Université de Moncton proche de chez nous. Puis j'ai hâte d'aller visiter avec le caucus du Grand Moncton l'Université de Moncton lundi, donc j'ai définitivement hâte. Donc, comme vous l'avez mentionné, as you indicated, there is definitely a communities that have brought up the same question you just asked. Are we going to review that? The answer is yes. Part of the reform is to look at that segment of the population. And several communities have also wanted to talk about other segments of the population. So it is being reviewed as the part of the reform process.
Well, that's good to hear as well. I appreciate that. It's important, as you are well aware, students spend much of the year in the municipality which they study in, and use the services. Many students today have cars and use the roads and so on and so forth. So I'm encouraged by that. I'll sort of shift here a little bit, quite a lot actually, because people may not realize that your department and you are responsible for issues around animal welfare. From time to time I get inquiries about that. Who's in charge of that in New Brunswick? And I tell them, and people are always surprised where it lives, but it does live in your department, and that's quite reasonable. One of the ongoing issues, though, around animal welfare and the legislation governing it in New Brunswick has been the capacity for enforcement. I've met with both representatives of the SPCA as well as a number of animal welfare groups, and we just heard it the other day from actually a sheep farmer as well, that the capacity for enforcement, let's say, is not quite where it needs to be to really ensure that legislation is being adhered to. So in this budget, it's not detailed enough, there's not a granular enough level of detail to know. So in this budget for the coming year, is there any increase? I guess it would be in the local and regional governance section, perhaps, I don't know. Anyways, is there any increase in the money allocated to enforcement?
Chair, to the member of Fredericton South, excellent question, thank you. Again, there was no one more surprised than me. We would take care of animal welfare also at the at the department. Actually, next week we are meeting with animal advocates. It's a question definitely that comes up again on a weekly basis, and I definitely agree with you. There is some room for improvement on that side, and I think on a budgetary, there is an increase of 1% per year. So we, through the department, support the NB SPCA through department budget, and we have a contract with them. So specifically on enforcement, we contract that out to the NB SPCA.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I'm aware of that, and it's a very unusual arrangement because for most departments, for most legislation, the departments are responsible for enforcement is now carried out through public safety. Even public health inspectors now are under that umbrella of public safety. So local government is, your department is a little, well, it's certainly an outlier with respect to how enforcement of legislation gets done in the province by actually hiring it out, in this case with the SPCA. I think partly my conclusion, anyways, in looking at this, is that's part of the problem. Not because the SPCA are not a good bunch and they don't have good enforcement people there, but the experience in government in interacting with non-government, non-profit organizations is tend to think and get a deal. You get a deal by contracting out work from them and not having it done by government itself. So I think that I expect that the enforcement people in SPCA would love to be transferred into public safety, into the public sector, to continue to carry out their work, but with the resources necessary to actually fulfill the goals and objectives of the legislation. So is there any work planned in this fiscal year to look at addressing the enforcement shortcomings by bringing enforcement into public safety and enabling those enforcement officers with the SPCA to compete for those positions?
member from Fredericton South. Again, so to address enforcement, again, we have a contract with NB SPCA that sets out the level of enforcement, and definitely the NB SPCA have that knowledge, expertise that we don't have within the department. So that's why we work in partnership with the NB SPCA. The contract, we have 5-year agreements with NB SPCA. The contract, this existing contract will end in 2025. And at that time, every time that the contract expires, we have those discussions with public safety within the local government team. For example, if we are to continue with NBCA and definitely explore other options also. So right now we have an agreement with NBSPCA for the next 4 years.
Thank you for that response. Most of us love our animals. They have an important role in our lives and our families. Unfortunately, there are some who treat them poorly, and so this is important. And I wish you the best in your discussions with the organization. Animal welfare organization will be meeting in the coming days. They do vital work as advocates on behalf of pets and other animals in the province. It's important that they're advocates, like in every sector, to push us to do better, do more to shine the light on problems that are identified by the public, so that we can ensure that the legislation, if it's adequate, is being applied effectively, comprehensively, and if it's not, that we improve the legislation. So good luck with the meeting. I would extend my own gratitude to all those involved in organizations and those who are not, but write and phone about their concerns around animal welfare. It's important, and I thank them for that. Mr. Chair, the Green Caucus has but a microscopic portion of the allotted time for budget estimates that the official opposition has. So I'm going to have to end here, and I want the Minister to know it's not because we don't see his department as important or his work as important, and it certainly is more than ever with the major reforms that are being anticipated for local governance and the consultation process that he's going forward, and we've got all kinds of questions on that, but we just don't have the time because big departments, no disrespect to the Minister, like social development, are coming up, education, and so we've got to keep some of our powder dry, as they say, to ensure we have sufficient time left to represent our constituents with respect to the files those departments are responsible for and their budgets. So I want to, through you, Mr. Chair, thank the Minister and his staff, and I hope he understands that this is no reflection on the importance of his work or his department's work. Not at all. It's just how we have to budget our time. So thank you very much.
Through the Chair, I just want to thank the member from Fredericton South. And on this part of the aisle, we love animals too. I think it's during this pandemic, our furry friends have definitely played a role for keeping our mental health alive. So on that point, totally agree. And I definitely extend the invitation to all members from the different parties at any time. If you have any questions, comments regarding reform, please come and see us. This group is of fine individuals, and myself are always ready to talk about reform. And if you have any questions, comments, and again, I think the member of Kent North has been by office already 3 times, and we have great discussions on local governance reform. And if you have any from the of your constituents or your members of your parties, please, this is a New Brunswick solution. We want to make sure that we provide New Brunswickers reform on local governance, and this is an open and transparent process, and it's really important for New Brunswickers to discuss. And I know the Department of, my colleagues have definitely talked this morning at breakfast about DTI, so I know they'll have great discussions here on budget estimates. Thank you, Mr.